Hey everybody, welcome to another corner conversation on the Sermon on the Mount. Uh, Look at this crew. We don't even have
We're missing a bunch of people.
Rich
Yeah,
and
name their names.
Greg.
That would have been real awkward.
Whatever did yeah, we don't have them with us, but yeah, this is a great crew. Rachel, thank you for bringing the female percentage up.
I mean, I'm I don't know if I brought the percentage up. I think I'm just one.
That's true.
And I'm always here. So. Same. Oh man.
Well, it is today we are continuing on with the Sermon on the Mount. We are at the almost the end of the "So You've Heard It Said" portion of Jesus, where he starts off, "You've heard it said not to murder," and he says, not just murder, don't hate. You've heard it said, don't get divorced. Is that number 2?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says this conversation about not marginalizing and not taking or manipulating your responsibilities, letting your yeses be yes, your noes be noes. And today we come to the cheeks.
Turn the other cheek. Yeah. Turn the other cheek. Which I think I don't know what's happening. I apologize. But we've been talking about how it connects to all the other pieces in the Beatitudes. And like I was thinking through this, turn the other cheek. I'm jumping right into this part because a lot of people know this verse. So I mean, we should probably talk about it a little bit. But turning the other cheek, letting people get away with things sometimes or not, I don't know. Not responding in kind to an offense against you, but like how all the Beatitudes connect to this. Because I think I don't know, a lot of these, I mean, they all connect to each other really well.
I think, Adam, you had good thoughts on good thoughts. You had good thoughts on it's could you verbalize a little bit about like this? Is this a call to be marginalized or to be manipulated or to be
So I think one of the key takeaways I take from this verse and like the verses surrounding this is that so many times whenever we are faced with these situations, people will use this verse in a very manipulative way of saying like,
what a gift.
"Oh, you've been abused. Forgive."
Yeah.
And it's like,
turn the other cheek, friend.
yeah. It's like, let yourself get run over time and time again. And I think it's important for us to step away from that context and make sure we understand like the purpose of turning the other cheek is like in a lot of ways this is like a public shaming mechanism, where you're asked to give up your rights to let the community at large like draw attention to this fact that this abuse occurred. So to me that's like one of the big things I take away from this is like so many times like let's not use it in this massive forgiveness context. And forgiveness is great. I mean, it's half of what we do in Christianity.
We're supposed to do it a lot.
We're supposed to follow someone's example in this. But yeah, it's one of those things of just be careful in how we're applying this. Because I don't want to see people get beaten down because of trauma.
I have no idea who put a bunch of, it might have been Greg. I'm not sure. It might have been you, Adam. But the Old Testament references, I think there's 3 or 4 of the eye for an eye or tooth for a tooth. And I would say that missing it, I always thought that was just really a declaration of, listen, sometimes it's kill or be killed, or it's like, but that was actually quite revolutionary because it was about a metered response. Because like the thing is that you killed my sheep, well, I'm gonna burn your farm down.
Yeah.
Like now it's very easy to say like that's extreme, Scott, but man, like I was gonna say that's kind of in me, right? If it's not if somebody turn the other cheek, it's like if somebody slaps you in the cheek, you kick out their feet and elbow them in the forehead.
Yeah.
Kind of a moment. And I think that's humanity.
Yeah.
And so the Old Testament calling of an eye for an eye or tooth for tooth is it's about metered response. And that again, what was put in the document was talked about is that that is a communal reality. That's like let that be a part of culture and let that be something that leads your legal system or legal responses. And then when we fast forward to New Testament time, what it was is that it went from being like metered response to like excuse. It was used as like this, I have license to light you up.
Yeah.
And there's a very, like it's internal, which Jesus is continually pointing towards the internal. The internal change is when, internally you're going, I need to have a metered response to this reality of like, nope, they this to me, so no, I'm going to do the same or even more to them. And it's that's broken.
Yeah. I think like this scripture is so layered, which like I feel like at face value you wouldn't think that. But then we were talking about like what Adam said about if somebody slaps you, and Scott and I were talking, this Scott Gorman, I'm pointing, but you can't see who I'm pointing to. But we were talking about just like if somebody slaps you, like backhands you on one side of the cheek and then you turn the other cheek and then they open-handed slap you, like it changes the meaning to the slap and like how it makes somebody see you more as an equal and even going the extra mile. And like there's some like interesting like taking back some power in this moment, like not just I'm not going to just go this 1 mile, but I'm going to go 2. And I'm also like it's illegal to take the outer cloak. Like there's just all these interesting cultural things that are happening that allows people to fight against some of this power dynamic, but in a really healthier way than like, because like this was like there's zealots and then there's the other people that are trying to live with the Romans and the tax collectors, and like they're responding to these really difficult situations in extreme ways. And this feels like a different kind of response that, like you said, like it shows the power dynamics, but it also allows some resistance to what's happening. And I feel like the other layer is this response and like metered response, like not responding in kind. Like if you're turning the other cheek, you're not just blowing somebody up, but you're still speaking to like this power dynamic. And so it's not laying on the floor and dying and letting somebody just roll over you, but there is, I don't know, it's just really interesting. And then you add in the greatest commandment to love God and then love your neighbor as yourself. And like, how do you do all these things in this loving manner where you're like, because that is the whole thing. The whole thing is Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. It's a heart issue. He's calling us to love each other. He's calling us to love our neighbors. He's calling blessing on people that normally aren't seen as blessed. Like, it's just so upside down, so messy and so beautiful at the same time and complicated. Like, just complex.
What's an invitation to thoughtfulness? I think we talked about this on Thursday, is that moment when you in these declarations that somebody hits you turning the other cheek, it's a moment of like, okay, you didn't gutturally respond, they might have thought a lot about hitting you. But sometimes that could be just a fly off the handle moment. But there's thoughtfulness to turning the cheek. There's thoughtfulness to if somebody sues you to again to give over this Roman obligation of carrying somebody's stuff to thoughtfulness of going farther. The thoughtfulness of lending or giving to those that would ask. That was kind of a zinger to put in on the end, but uh, thoughtfulness is such an important part of the equation because I think, I mean, Adam, you alluded to it, but the moment when somebody says, um, your spouse is abusive, turn the other cheek, be like Jesus, turn the other cheek, you're just like, oh, that is like removing thoughtfulness from it. That is, that's not this call. The call is again to have metered response that is thought out. That is then it's not a matter of it's not submitting all power. I'm gonna. I think of like one of our dogs, Elsie. She always like lays on her back. Like if you would chase after, just immediately into the submissive moment. That's not the call that we have here. Is to just roll over and just take it. And Act 16, I love when this is such a fun story and it's So Paul and Silas are who are not deity, have many opportunity. They were people that failed, but here there's this kind of an interesting moment that they healed a girl who was a slave, and she lost her value to the slave owners. She was able to predict the future, and so they then had them arrested, stripped, and beaten, which is uh, an experience that I haven't had. It
No,
sounds like so. Like, wouldn't you remember that for the rest of your life?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
It's bad. And then they were thrown into jail. And then that night, it says like they were worshiping, which is there's I don't know, pretty remarkable. Probably chosen. They chose to do it. There was some value in them being there together. It was, I think, a beautiful moment. Earthquake, the jail cells, the chains, everything opens, but it's completely dark, and so the jailer thinks that everybody just escaped and he's about to kill himself. And then
Hmm.
Paul calls out, "No, don't kill yourself. We're all still here." The jailer has this transformative moment, and him and his family turn to Christ. And then the end of the story, after all this, again, this is them not being a pushover, just trying to see. I'd love to hear how you feel like, is this them living out this turn the other cheek mentality? But uh, when they said the Roman authorities said, the magistrates, they said, let him go, release him, and tell them to leave and go in peace. And Paul said to the officers, "Wait, you beat us publicly without a trial, and we're Roman citizens. You threw us into prison, and you want to get rid of us quietly?" And this was like, again, they had rights, and their rights were just trampled upon. And so send the magistrate down here to escort us out personally. And so they did. And Paul and Silas, they left prison and they went to a neighbor's house there and encouraged them and moved on. But I just think I love the story. Again, talk about layers, is that there's so many different layers of different responses that could have happened in here. And I think, again, Paul and Silas aren't the heroes, but it shows some of the fruit of following Jesus' call of turning the other cheek. And so,
Yeah.
right. I summarize it. Ty's going to fix it now.
Yeah, well, something that's kind of important and a nuance to this is the fact that there are Roman citizens, because not all Jews were Roman citizens,
Yep.
and the way that they were treated would have been okay if they weren't citizens, which is kind of like bizarre for us because like in our time, even if you're not a citizen, you still have
Careful.
a certain level of access to rights, like process.
Hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
There we go.
Wait. Anyways, you should, in theory, have access to a certain process, and you weren't hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
So that's why that's part of why this was such a big deal is that they were denied their rights that they would have had as dual citizens, and so this was a really big thing for them, and so the way that they take and they like not necessarily hold out, but go, no, we aren't gonna just let this blow over so you can do this again.
Yeah.
This is something that's going to be talked about. Are you going to fix it, Adam?
Hypothetically?
We all appreciate that.
Hypothetically. Yeah, so ultimately I would say paralleling that is the idea that like, yes, we all have rights, like, and that's such an embedded nature of Americans, like all the people sitting in this room and probably most of the people listening to this, is that like we all live with such a world of I can do certain things just because I exist and I live here. Like, and that is an amazing, freeing thing that has not always been true throughout our world and throughout our history.
And the hearers of the Sermon on the Mount, that would have been, right? That wouldn't have been what they thought.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think there's some rights they expect to have from like a societal and like if you're narrowing it down to just like the Galilean Jew, that's likely to have been the main hearers of the Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah.
But even still, like the larger, broader context, no, like there's there's certain rights you expect to have as part of any society or part of any group, but yeah, it's just such a denial of those rights is kind of, and like Jesus' call here to set aside that right that you have in all of this
Yeah.
is such a hard thing for us to grasp because like we're so indoctrinated to that idea of like
Yeah, how do we like so Jesus, his continual call of taking up your cross and following him, dying to yourself, when you in giving up your life is where you find that's where life really is. It's so I mean that is weaved into the web of this turning the other cheek is that true life being set up for success, like the end of the Sermon on the Mount, is that this is wisdom. It almost has some proverb tone to it that, storms will come and do these things and you'll be able to stand strong. But, yeah, I'd love to like hear more about like this. How does submitting your rights and even not necessarily being a pushover in this, but how does that lead to true life, or how does this help you stand when storms come?
I think something about all the Sermon on the Mount is it is this refocusing and drawing attention to um, God's kingdom, and that's both here and now and future hope that we have as followers of Christ. And um, I've been lately reading in Church Fathers, and I can't remember which one specifically because it was kind of like a footnote comment on second century and persecution, things like that. Um, but realizing with all these things, it's that the real value is that the things are the kingdom of heaven.
Hmm.
And so when you think about like turning the other cheek, it's almost like a refocusing of like, does this actually matter in the grand scheme of things?
That's a great question.
And and the church father that I can't remember the name of just because they all have fun names, but he has this. He's writing a letter from prison. He's going to be executed, and it's the thing. He says, "Well, of course they have to kill us because they can't take anything away from us. They can't take away our property. They can't take because those are the things that we value. So they kill us because they think that that's actually going to matter. But we know that we have a future hope, and so they really can't take anything away from us. They're powerless in this situation." But that was really his response of like, yeah, of course we're being persecuted because the things that we actually value, they can't touch.
one thing I kind of always think about in this discussion is like the idea that we are all the main character of our own stories. And excuse me, the call to turn the other cheek is really a call to step outside of your main character narrative and to set that aside and say, see, everything I did was because of, and it was just justified. Oh, you took the reaction and hit me back. Therefore, I was right to take whatever action in the first place. Or you get to, if you're the person who's getting slapped in that situation, you as the main character get to say, look, I have the liberty of doing this now because it's self-defense. And it's like, it's great to be able to have that justification, but what's going on inside of a person who wants to rely on the justification rather than, just setting aside that right to react in that way.
Yeah, and to bring
that's real good.
what both of you just said in that is does this really matter? Like that's Jesus's call of when he's asked what is the greatest commandment, love God and love people and to lean into that. And so we've got a long list of things that are fair and unfair that we can just put before people on Sunday. And when you say, describing some of the unfair things, a coworker gets credit for something that was your idea. Does it really matter? Like to let that be a loop in our thinking, and it's not fair. But does it, again, in the context, will that really matter? A surprise fee hidden in fine print. And I'm like, these things again, it's so easy to have this moment where you're the central character, and because of it, you just freak out. I think about, things like, somebody doesn't use their blinker, and you just like you can have a weird like meltdown moment in those things, but to have put this loop in your thought and going, all right, Jesus said it's really can be summed up in this: loving God and loving people. And so not a blinker not being used, does it really matter? And hard reality of that is that if I run down that trail of uh, non-reciprocal response, a non-deserved response, I'm running so far away from what actually really, really matters. And
I think what
it'll
matters
hurt.
in that moment is like the practice we get to do in being that loving person. Like,
Yeah.
like check in my spirit every time I'm mad at someone for not using their blinker, because I have to say to myself, okay, really? Like, does this matter? And how can I handle this better?
Yeah, think
And
about
like,
like luggage being lost and you freak out on somebody at a
yeah.
counter and
And how
they didn't deserve
they didn't
it.
deserve it, and it ruins like, and I always think of that like in the morning when you're driving to work and somebody's driving slow, and then you have this irrational anger towards this person.
I don't know what you're feeling.
I don't know what you would, but me, okay. Like somebody, I was going to an appointment and the guy in front of me was going like 12 in a 30, and there was like no people around. And I just remember being like, oh my goodness, and like just internal mad because I'm going to be late and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But then like if I show that rage and I let him know how mad I am, like he takes that to the next thing he does, and the next thing that the next person he hits. Like the impact is so much bigger than just that small little moment of rage when you just let it go all the time. But if you can handle things well and be kind and take a breath and just checking how you respond to people, and like seeing people in the image of God, that they are created in the image of God. Like Mike and I were just talking about how important it is to shift our thinking when and how we treat people, and how like so much of that has to be that we view people as like their image. They were created in the image of God, just like I am. No matter how frustrating that person is, no matter how whatever, they have gifts that God gave them, all this stuff, because it has to shift how you view people. And like like this whole thing, the whole Sermon on the Mount, the kingdom of God, like we talk like this is so educational and it's so important, but like how do we change our hearts? Like how do we let the Holy Spirit transform us? Because like if this isn't happening internally, and like we've talked about like weeks before, like if we're pretending to turn the other cheek, but like internally still raging, or like acting a certain way, like externally feeling a way and not changing on the inside, like what's the point in it? We have to figure out how to like change our hearts.
At the end of this, there isn't a quiz that goes,
Do you remember?
Can you repeat
Yeah.
that? Because that is that
it's fun and it's helpful.
It's like, do you want a doctor that can do really good on the test, but will just like do whatever?
Yeah, like we have to figure out how there's heart change and what transforming, how this becomes who we are.
And I think that's part of the call at the very end of this section. I mean, because what we're asked, it's really easy to focus on the first parts where it's like, oh, you've had a huge affront to you, and you've basically been presented with the opportunity to, what everybody would probably sit back and say is respond in kind.
Yeah.
But the last, verse of this section, which all ties back to the eye to eye, tooth for tooth principle here, is, and whenever somebody's approaching you, asking for a loan, like that's where, like, I personally am just like, ooh, that stings a little bit more, because like there I've given up, not just my right to enter an emotional state of anger, but to also enter an emotional state of annoyance.
Yeah.
And that hurts.
Yeah. But yeah, that last verse, it's give to the one who asks you and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. And like we can, like you said, like we can talk about all this stuff, but like that does sum it up. We can't forget the last verse. Give to the one who asks you and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you.
Adam, you have this continuum of human emotions. And this, I mean, exactly what you're saying. It's a beast of a calling. Is that, turning the other cheek, putting a loop in your thinking, being selfless, doing all these things. It's not just in the, extreme emotion of fear and dread. It's also in slight annoyance, and so it's sometimes I don't know, probably none of us have been slapped recently, maybe
I don't-
ever.
I have a 3-year-old.
But
That is true.
but
Speaking
the
right
thing
forward.
is that and so it would be very easy to go, well, good word, Jesus. But when you say that this calling, like you said, is all the way down to just slight annoyance, turn the other cheek in that moment.
Mhm.
Then all of a sudden you go, ooh, this truly is an internal change, and it would be helpful. And I really need the spirit and truth to walk it out.
Kind of like Gandhi's take on this whole thing. He said, if eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth just makes everybody blind and toothless. Because everybody's taking, right?
Yeah.
And when you take your rights and oh, this is my right, I'm going to do, basically what's left is not much, because
Yeah.
everybody's taking their rights. And what he's calling us to is to give up those rights and to build, and to build those, build back. It's like, I guess, one way to think about it is, if you've got a paper company and they clear cut a forest and then they don't bother to plant.
Mm.
Well, they're not hurting, they're hurting the planet, but they're hurting themselves too.
Mm.
Because they don't have anything to go back to 20 or 30 years down the road to make more paper. And so that's what he's kind of, calling us to say, yeah, you have these rights and you can take them.
Mm.
But if you take your bite and everybody else takes their bite, there's not going to be anything left. Whereas you, by realizing that you have these rights and you say, I'm gonna let that, I'm just gonna let it ride. It leaves more, and if everybody's kind of, it's like, when you're growing up and your parents said, oh, I always leave everything better than you found it, and you're kind of like, yeah, whatever. But there is something to that,
So true.
and it just, it makes it better for, for everyone and for you next time you want to go back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was that Gorman's wrap up? So good.
Fun.
Well,
You're on theme segment.
it's good. Great conversation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.